the Omega Speedmaster Automatic. Now this watch is modular in design. You can see I've got a dial there and the main part of the movement, but if we take off like a rocket ship, you can see all the components of the chronograph module, which also require a good clean when the watch has a service. Now this is the baby brother of the famous Omega Speedmaster Professional that Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong took to the moon, which of course is really, really cool. But is this watch any good? Here it is then, the Omega Speedmaster Automatic, or reduced, which is the baby brother watch of the legendary Omega Speedmaster Professional, the watch that Buzz Aldrin I love the fact that that guy's called Buzz, that Buzz Aldrin wore on that brilliant mission, or series of missions that the guys at NASA did back in the day. Hats off to those guys all round. So yeah, what do we think about this? Well, the first thing that kind of strikes myself as a watchmaker when I look at this is, and feel it, is, what's all the fuss about? The NASA trip is a massive deal, and you know, that's a historical thing, and this watch has part of that heritage in it, but it's not the same watch. It's a smaller watch, it's a different movement. This is an automatic. The astronauts had the privilege of, you know, winding their watch up every day, but they had about 400 people in mission control reminding them to do it, of course. So what can I say about this particular piece? The first thing that hits me is, as a chronograph, it's not as pretty as the chronograph that I own, and I did a video on this Swiss D4 chronograph with the Landeron movement, and I know it's a totally different look. If I was buying one of these, I'd go for the one on the left, but that is of course just a pure taste thing, and that is my own feeling about it. And because it's a taste thing, it is pretty worthless actually, because other guys have a completely different taste. Now, the conclusion that I've come to looking at this piece is that the big deal about it is that it is understated. That is the massive deal with this, because what I'm expecting to see when we get into this and when we put it on the time graph, which we're going to do in a moment, is a really robust, functional chronograph, which is easy to read, which isn't in your face saying, hey, look at me, I'm a Daytona. It is a tool watch, it is legible, it is small, reasonably small on the wrist compared with the Professional, and all of that makes this watch, I think, on reflection, really classy. I think it's the sort of thing, and the guy, my man who's a friend from the same neck of the woods as me down here in South Wales, that has sent this watch to me for service, he mentioned that it was his favourite piece. And I've also seen the other watches in his collection, which I have to say are chosen by guys, obviously a discerning collector, because he's got some really nice pieces, but this apparently is his favourite, and I think I can see why, because even from the 4 minutes and 11 seconds when I started to record this video and I've just been looking over this watch, I can feel it growing on me even as I do that. There's a kind of aviation heritage here. There, I mean, clearly with the NASA guys, there is a military heritage again, because those two things are very closely aligned. Back in the 60s, if you were going to be an astronaut, you started life flying some horrendously dangerous flying machine with a huge jet engine in the back of it. And so you'd kind of cut your teeth wearing black and white watches like this. Anyway, enough of my initial impression. And so we have the watch now on the time grapher, and it is exactly as I thought it would be. Let's just have a look at that there now, and you can see that the movement is running exactly in beat, and you know, kind of like it's on rails there. You know, I have no worries about this movement at all. The amplitude is low, it's below 200, but that's why it's in for a service. But you know, this movement, based on an ETA movement, which has been sort of titivated, for want of a better word, by Omega, you know, that is really doing the business there. You can see it is beating at 28,800, and you know, like it's on rails. So we can regulate it, and we can get the amplitude back up with the service. So that's the job that we've got to do. And also notice there that the lift angle on this movement isn't 52 degrees, it is actually 51 degrees. So we made sure of that before we took these readings. So we've got a nice accurate amplitude, which is sat there smack on 200 at the moment. Right, so just before I do take it apart, I just want to show you this acrylic crystal that we have on these watches. And you know, a little bit like the Vostoks that also have a similar type of, at least visually, the crystal is domed. I think it's lucite they use with the Vostoks, but they look similar, and it gives a kind of retro cool appearance. But as you can see, a little bit of scratching on a crystal is one thing and you can live with it, but this is gone beyond that a little bit, especially if we focus in on, you know, this area there where we've got some, you know, pretty major damage to the crystal. So one of the jobs that the owner has asked me to do is to swap out the crystal, and we'll do that as part of the service. The other thing that I noticed is some damage to the back of the watch. Not serious, but let's just take a look at that. Now, damage might be too strong a word, but you know what I was referring to is this kind of scratching where somebody's had a go at, you know, I'm going to open this case, I'm going to open this wretched case, and really gone at it with, you know, something steel there to try and get that in focus a bit better. And as you can see, the scratching as a result is a little bit nasty there. We've also got quite a lot of human tissue under the you know, dried sweat and that sort of thing. Guys, looking at this out, this actually isn't bad. This is pretty standard. And now we have the back off the watch to reveal this Omega 3220 alpha movement, which on first looking at, I have to say, looks very, very businesslike and has a shockingly high number of joules there. As you can see, 47 joules in this movement. So that's the lovely thing. And there is the movement then out of the case, and difficult to get it all in focus with the depth of field on this camera. But you can see basically the way it's constructed. To the bottom left at the about 7 o'clock position, you can just see the underside of, or the edge of the rotor arm there. And you know, at the bottom underneath that lot, you've got the normal automatic works and a powertrain, much as you'd find on, you know, any normal watch like that. There are no calendar works on this watch, mercifully, because as you can see, where the dial would normally sit flush against the rest of the movement, you've got then, you know, about 4 millimeters where sandwiched between the rest of the movement and the dial is the chronograph module. So when we lift off the dial in a moment, we'll be able to see that in all its glory, and that will account for quite a lot of the 47 joules in this movement, because you know the chronograph accounts for a lot of moving parts on this watch. So you know, where there is metal against metal, we need some jouling to make sure that we keep the wear and friction to a minimum. Anyway, let's get the hands off, and then I'm going to turn the watch over and start to concentrate on the powertrain, so I can just get that balance out and put it somewhere safe. Now, before we take the hands off, we tend to manipulate them round using the stem so they're all pointing in the same direction to make it easy. The other thing I tend to do is just take a photographic record of the distances on the hand stack from this direction, so that you can just see out of the factory the depth to which the hands have been applied, because you know the tolerances here are reasonably fine, and if you mess that up when you're putting the hands back on, then you can be, you know, in problems, because these hands have also got to clear the other 3 hands on the sub dial, which is why you can see that the hour hand is maybe lifted up a little bit more than it would be normally. So all that kind of detail is important. Right, let's crack on. Top end of this chronograph module, and as you can see, you know, the first good thing is we've got a dial washer, a foil there in the center of that very thin washer. That's really important because that keeps pressure down on the hour wheel, and without it you tend to get stuff slipping. But really what I'm interested in is just the gorgeous way that Omega have, you know, finished this top plate of the chronograph module with the unpronounceable French name. And, you know, we got a lot of jewels in there. You can see them already. If you look at the 6 o'clock and the 9 and the 3 o'clock position there, I'll just come in on one of them. Hang on. Oops, that's out. And that is further in there. You can see the pivots of the 3 subdials in those positions, and of course they are pushing up through joules, and there are a lot of joules here. So, and everything is shiny and nice, and you know, it just looks like someone's really bothered with it. I have to say, I do really like this movement so far. So, as you can see here now, with the dial nice and safely under something solid to keep it protected, I am pretty well on with the disassembly of the chronograph module. Bearing in mind I haven't even started the powertrain yet, so you can see there are a few components left on here. I just want to focus now in a moment on one of the little springs here, just in case you're trying to take this thing apart yourself. And but there are some components here that Omega themselves suggest that you leave assembled as it goes into the cleaner. So we don't actually disassemble absolutely everything, but we get pretty close to it. So I want to just now focus on, you know, for an example, one of these tiny little springs. So here we are, nice and close, and you just see I've released the tension on this spring here, which is part of the chronograph mechanism. It's actually just putting tension on the pivot that you can see poking through there in the middle of the frame. Now the thing, if you are working on this movement, guys, there are a number of these springs of this size. They're pretty tiny, and you don't want to mess that up. So when I take them off, I actually lay a little bit of Rodico, just like a thin slither of Rodico, over the spring whilst I manipulate it, and that stops it flying across the room. That's just a top tip there. As you can see here, we are pretty far on now with the disassembly of this part of the watch, which is good. As you can also see, literally on all of the wheels and anywhere, look, if I just get that in focus there, you can see the amount of dried grease that we've got. Okay, oh, you know, there's that right in the center of the frame now there. You can see there's a lot of dried grease there, and that's not going to be helping the performance of this, so that's why we need to get in and do the service. So all very good, let's crack on. And we are really close up now, behind one of the key components in the chronograph works, and we're looking at component number 1594, which is the little circular jewel that you can see inserted in the back of this mechanism. Now this will fall out, and it is very, very tiny, so you need to be really, really careful when you're cleaning this part of the chronograph that you don't lose this jewel, because there's no point in, you know, doing a complete service and then losing one of the critical jewels in the system, because this is the jewel for the minute hand pinions. So, you know, it's pretty important that it stays in there, and it is loose. So just a little tip for you there. So just to get an idea of scale here, you can see one of my screwdrivers, and you know, there is that jewel now in the center of the frame. So guys, you need to be really, really careful when you're doing this part of the disassembly and assembly of this particular component. And we are down into the powertrain proper now, and if I just come in a little bit closer to show you, I can't quite decide. I think there's a build-up of something. It's almost like a crystallization along the edge of that wheel there, but all the teeth look to be in place, which is important. So the steer wheel at the bottom is the escape wheel. That also looks okay. So we're going to pop these wheels out now, and pretty soon we'll be putting all of this lot through the ultrasonic cleaner. And I've just lifted the wheels out now, and as you can see, actually there is way too much lubrication on the top of those two wheels, and it's starting to get old and a bit sticky. And as you can see, you know, the wheels are actually stuck together, which, you know, is less than ideal completely, because that is going to take, you know, that's going to add friction, take power out of the train, and you're going to have the low amplitude that we witnessed at the start. So, you know, we're going to sort that out now through the ultrasonic cleaner and some nice proper watch rinse solution. And this is the underside of the barrel bridge, and there's a few components here that need taking out and cleaning properly. Just be careful. In the center of the frame there, you can see the spring. You're going to need to be careful always with that. You don't want that flying across the room, because, you know, the old law with springs flying across the room is that you never find them, regardless of how clean your workshop is. So, you know, just be careful with it. And so I'm going to disassemble this now. And just to look now at the keyless works, which are, you know, pretty standard, but, you know, looking businesslike there nonetheless. The only observation I would make, if we can come in a little bit closer, as you can see, this watch has been worked on before. I mean, just looking at that screw, and it has been a little bit heavy-handed with somebody. The you know, the screws should not look like that when you've finished with them. If they do, you've been using the wrong size screwdriver. So guys, please just take a little bit of time to use the right size screwdriver, because eventually that screw will need to be replaced. So let's crack on. And there then are the components of the Speedmaster Automatic. Everything above the pegwood there is pretty much the chronograph module, and as you can see, is quite a lot of components there. And below the pegwood we've got the ETA movement, which Omega have used for this particular caliber. As you can see, I always protect the balance. It's got its own little bit of foam there and a protective cover over it so nothing gets knocked onto it whilst I'm working. And yeah, we are ready now to this lot's been through the ultrasonic cleaner, so it's clean and we are ready to reassemble the watch. I'm going to stop a few times along the way when I see something that you guys may think is interesting, but I have some work to do, so I best get on with it. And turning for a moment to the case, and specifically the Hesselite crystal, which I have just removed. And as you can see, the thing about having a watch which is your favorite is you wear it all the time, and when you wear a watch like this all the time, it ends up getting a bit gunky. And as you can see here, at some fairly high magnification, there is an awful lot of gunk between the bezel and the Hesselite crystal. So again, as part of the service, you know, this part of the case now will go in the ultrasonic cleaner and come out looking absolutely gorgeous, and then we're going to put in a new piece of Hesselite in there and the thing will look lovely. And actually I really enjoy doing that. But guys, if you've got one of these watches and you wear it a lot, take a look at it, you know, with an eyeglass or something, you'll probably see that it's minging. So I'm starting the reassembly with the chronograph module, and a good thing to do before you start putting components back into a main plate like this is just check the individual jewels to make sure they are looking good. And the way that I tend to do this is to stick the light, a strong light, behind the plate and shine it through the jewels. That way you can see if they're, you know, see them quite clearly if they're cracked or anything. And you know, these are all looking really nice. So well done, Omega, on that. Right, we can put this plate now in its proper orientation and start putting the components onto it. And that was quick, because hey, look, it's all back together and running nicely and very nice and shiny. But guys, we are out of time for this week, so the rest of the footage, which is about 25 minutes worth, is coming very soon. And at the end, I'm going to tell you what I actually think about the Omega Speedmaster Automatic. Guys, if you like my videos, then please subscribe. Please hit the bell icon there so that you're alerted every time I upload a video. But for the moment, from the watch bench here in Pembroke Dock in the United Kingdom, good night and God bless.